Welcome everyone, good afternoon, and thank you for joining us in our Alternative Options for School Swimming webinar with Lifesaving Victoria. We have waited a couple of moments just to let a few more people in, and thank you to Andy for introducing yourself in the chat. Feel free to jump on that chat, everyone. Say hello to all of us here and let us know where you're joining us from as well. We love to see where we're reaching out to, who's joining us for these sessions, and it's a great way to interact with other members of this webinar as well as our Lifesaving Victoria staff. So in today's session, we are going to look into 3 options that have been developed by us at Lifesaving Victoria, along with an option that has been developed alongside the Department of Education and Training as well. These 3 options are to support schools who have missed out on their swimming lessons throughout the year of 2021, and they are welcome to be used for the rest of this year as well as into next year, but we will jump into all those details throughout the webinar. But it's a great way to think about the different options that are available to you as schools to get your students in the water learning all about swimming and water safety education. Now, this presentation is in fact targeted towards schools. If you are a swim school, you are still welcome to join us, absolutely. However, we did also host a swim school webinar on Friday, just been, and this webinar was recorded. So this will end up on our toolkit website for our PD recordings and webinars. I will get Michelle to pop that link straight into the chat now. So by the end of this week, hopefully in the middle of this week, we will have the recordings uploaded onto the page that will be in the chat for you guys. So if you did miss out on Friday's session, if you are a swim school and you'd like to catch up on that one, you can jump on there. Otherwise, you are more than welcome to stay, but just be mindful that this session will be targeted towards the education industry, so schools. We would like to begin this session today by acknowledging the traditional owners on all the lands on which we meet today and pay our respects to elders past, present and emerging. Now, I would like to introduce our presenters for today. First of all, my name is Caitlin Greenhill. I am a Project Officer for Swimming and Water Safety Education at Lifesaving Victoria. We will also be joined by Liz White, who is the statewide swimming coordinator at the Department of Education and Training, and she will be talking us through the funding options and specifically one of our first options, the voucher system that you may have heard of through the recent emails that we have been sending out from Lifesaving Victoria. We will also be joined by Liz Tazzoni, who is the Group Manager for Education at Lifesaving Victoria. She will talk to us about the current state of play and how and why these particular options are so important and why they've been developed. Next up, we'll be joined by Jackie Taylor, who is the Learn to Swim Specialist at Lifesaving Victoria, who will talk to us in a little bit more detail about the first option, the voucher system, and how this can be implemented by schools and swim schools. And finally, to wrap it up, we have Mark Belitho, who is the Coordinator of Education Program Development and Delivery at Lifesaving Victoria, who will be discussing the last 2 options, so our Mega Beach Days, as well as our incursion programs for schools as well. So just a little bit of housekeeping to start us off. You will notice that your microphones and cameras have been disabled, so we do ask that these stay off throughout the presentation. You probably don't have the option to turn them on, but that's fine. This just allows us to get the presentation through clearly. Everybody can hear us and see our presentation without any disruptions there. We would like to point out that there are live captions available and they are available anonymously. So you can click on the 3 dots at the top of your screen and scroll down to where it says live captions. It might say activate live captions there, and they will pop up in an anonymous way on your screen. Please be mindful that this meeting will be recorded. It has already started. That way you can revisit this webinar recording. You can share this webinar recording with your colleagues, and it will be on the link that Michelle has popped into the chat at a later date this week. And finally, if you have any questions or comments at any time, please pop them straight in the chat. We may not get to them straight away. We may wait for the allocated question and answer time. However, we do have our fantastic education team on the chat today. You can hear me calling out Michelle's name. She's popping all those links in as we go as well. So we may be able to get to your questions during the presentation. Otherwise, as I said, we will jump straight to them when we get to the Q&A section. I would now like to introduce Liz White, who's going to talk to us all about swimming and water safety education in 2022 and the funding that is available. Thank you, Liz.
Thanks, Caitlin, and hi everybody. I'm the statewide swimming coordinator for the Department of Education and Training, and you're welcome to contact me at any time during the year, and my contact details will be at the end of this presentation. If we could go to the next slide, please, Caitlin. I'll just give you a bit of background on swimming and water safety education for schools. So swimming and water safety education has been part of the Victorian Curriculum Foundation to Year 10 since 2017, and there are two funding streams that support the delivery of this swimming and water safety education. The first is swimming in schools, and this is funding that's provided directly to schools for the delivery of programs. So to Victorian government schools, it goes to the primary schools, specialist schools and English language schools, and it also goes to Catholic primary schools. The second funding stream is the Public Water Safety Initiative, and this is a contract that the Department of Education has with Lifesaving Victoria for them to develop resources and provide training and direct support to the education sector as well as the aquatic industry. If we could go to the next slide. Now, a couple of weeks ago, the Minister for Education announced the school swimming outside of school hours voucher program. And this has since been communicated to primary schools as well as to the aquatic industry. Now, this program was rolled out in response to many schools not being able to deliver their swimming and water safety programs in 2020 and 2021 as a result of COVID-19. So the voucher program provides an opportunity for current primary school students who missed out on their school swimming lessons to catch up. And we're particularly concerned about the Year 6 students who may not have had the opportunity to engage in these programs for a couple of years now, who are moving on to high school where there's no targeted funding for swimming and water safety education before they've had the opportunity to achieve their Victorian Water Safety Certificate. Now, on the Department of Education Swimming in Schools webpage, there's more information on the voucher program, and I'm just putting that link into the chat now. And on this page, there are also FAQs for schools, swim schools, and families. So the voucher program schools will use the unexpended 2020 and 21 swimming in schools funding for this voucher program, and families can book directly with swim schools up until the end of June 2022, and children can undertake classes through the voucher program up until the end of December 2022. So just to go through the process on the next slide, thanks, Caitlin. The process for the voucher program is that schools, as always, have full autonomy over the programs that they run. So they will determine the students that are eligible to receive these vouchers and then liaise with the swim schools to determine the number of lessons that each student will receive. Schools have been provided with a letter template that they can send to families of these eligible students, providing them with the details of the swim school that they can contact, and also providing them with a request form that they will need to fill out and send back to their school. Once the schools have received these request forms, they will be able to provide a comprehensive list to the swim schools of the eligible students. So if we go to the next slide. Thanks, Caitlin. So once the swim schools have these comprehensive lists, families will be able to contact them and book directly with the swim schools for their child to undertake classes. The families will then take the children to the classes at a time that's convenient for them, and that will be after school, on the weekends, or during the school holidays. And the swim schools will need to verify that those students that have been booked are one of the eligible students on the list that they've been provided by the school. Now, there's no cost to families for this program. Swim schools will invoice the primary school directly, and the primary school will use their unexpended funds from 2020 and 2021 to pay for these classes. If we could go to the next slide, please, Caitlin. So for 2021 and 2020, the funds will be used on this voucher program, and any remaining funding will go into 2022 funding. If we could go to the next slide, please, Caitlin. So for 2022, the state government handed down its budget in May this year, and the Victorian government committed $55.2 million over the next 3 school years to swimming and water safety education. Schools will receive their 2022 funding from January next year. For Victorian government schools, they'll receive it through their student resource package, the SRP. And for Victorian Catholic primary schools, they'll receive it through the Catholic Education Commission of Victoria. This funding is to be used across any year level for the school. If we could go to the next slide, please, Caitlin. Now, the funding for 2022 has increased from previous levels of funding. For Metropolitan Victorian Government schools, where schools had received $124 per student, it's now receiving $235 per student. So for in primary schools, that's per year 6 student. For specialist schools, that's per student enrolled in the specialist school, and the same for English language schools. In regional Victorian government schools, schools had received $158 per student previously. From 2022 onwards, they will receive $270 per student, and this includes transport. For Victorian Catholic primary schools, transport is not included, but where they had been receiving $90 per student, they'll now receive $190. So it's a considerable increase in the funding level for 2022 going forward. So that's a summary of the context for schools and in relation to swimming and water safety. I'm going to be staying on this webinar for the rest of the hour, and I'll be able to answer any questions that you have on the chat. But if I don't get to all of your questions, please feel free to contact me on school.swimming@education.vic.gov.au or the phone number there, 4334 0523. Thank you. Now I'll hand back to Caitlin and the rest of the education team at Lifesaving Victoria, who'll take you through the other options that are available for schools in 2022. Thank you.
Fantastic. Thank you so much, Liz. Now, what we'll be doing now is we will jump into some questions. I have sort of been keeping an eye on the chat as we go. I haven't seen any pop up into the chat now, but please do let us know if you have any questions. We can pop them in the chat as we go forward, and we will attend to them when suitable. However, if you do have a question now directed towards the funding amounts that were mentioned there, the voucher system that Liz explained during her segment there as well, please do pop them in the chat now. I will open it up to Michelle and Liz Tassoni if there are any questions that you have come across. I don't think there are any, but I will open it up to you guys to let us know.
I don't think there's any questions as yet, Caitlin, so I think we'll just keep moving, and Liz can reply to them in the chat, or we can address them in our second lot of Q&A later on.
Fantastic. And just as you've said that, I have noticed one question pop up in the chat. Does the funding, I believe, does this apply to secondary students? Liz, if you wanted to attend to that question.
So the voucher program is for swimming in schools funding, which only goes to primary school students. There isn't any targeted funding for secondary students at the moment.
Thank you very much, Liz. And Song, I believe you may be referring to specialist schools. If that's correct, pop that in the chat there. I recognise your name. I know exactly where you work. So if that is for specialist schools, I believe, Liz, as you mentioned, the funding is targeted towards all students enrolled at the specialist school. Is that correct? That's
correct, yes.
Fantastic. Thank you so much. And Song, I hope that answered your question there. I've got Wendy as well, who's just popped a question in there. So exciting, grade 6 this year. They can't access the, exiting, not exciting. So exiting grade 6s this year can't access the funding.
No, that's not correct, Wendy. They can actually access this funding, and we're particularly keen for them to access this funding because the Year 6s going into high school in high school they won't have access to targeted funding for swimming and water safety. So what schools can do is provide families of Year 6 students now with the voucher, and they can access lessons at any time next year in 2022.
Excellent. Thank you so much, Liz, for explaining that one. And is there a limit to how many students can access this funding?
That's dependent on the primary school. The primary school will determine what students are eligible based on the programs they'll be running next year. So families who are eligible will be contacted by the primary school with the voucher and information relating to the swim school that they can contact.
Liz, in Son's case, he's referring to specialist schools. Is there a limit to how many students can access?
The funding or the voucher program?
Either.
So for the specialist schools, the funding is provided for each enrolment at a specialist school, and the voucher program is open to specialist school students as well. But I think there may be some I know a lot of specialist schools have their own pools on site, and so a lot of students have been able to undertake programs in 2021. So the voucher system may not be applicable for many students in specialist schools because they've undertaken programs, but it is open to them if the logistics are possible for them as well.
And just to confirm or check something with you, Liz, as well, that is relevant to Song's question there. So for the voucher system is only for the students who missed out on their school swimming lessons in the past 18 months or 2020, 2021. Is that correct?
That's correct, yes.
Fantastic, thank you. So I think that covers a bit more information there as well. But as we go, please do pop any more questions into the chat, and we do have another part at the end of the webinar where we will attend to even more questions. Just before we do move on, because I know that this is relevant to DET, Andy's just popped a question in there. Will the Education Department be communicating these details to schools?
Yeah, the Education Department sent communications out to all primary schools on the 26th of October in the school update newsletter that goes out to principals. So all schools have been notified of this program.
Thank you, Liz. All right, we will jump ahead to our next part of the webinar, and I will introduce Liz Tassoni, who is going to talk about the current state of play and the importance of these options.
Excellent, thanks for that, Caitlin. So you'll see on screen now a snippet from a recent article that was in The Age, just around the missed lessons and the impact that it has had. There has been a lot of media about the concerns of the increased drownings, and, you know, from a Lifesaving Victoria perspective, the concerns are really real. So, you know, in 2021, so that's from mid last year to mid this year, the Victorian Drowning Report is going to be released soon, but basically it shows for that 12-month period that childhood drowning deaths from that 0 to 14-year-old age group has been the highest number in over 20 years. So the age group that we directly work with from that 0 to 14-year-old age group is in the highest in 20 years. We already are showing very similar concerns to this in this current financial year. So from mid this year to mid next year, we're already on the same projection as that. And an example was over Cup weekend at an inland waterway, a 6-year-old child was pulled out non-responsive, but we were lucky enough in that scenario that they were revived. This is just a handful of incidents that happened over Cup weekend. So, you know, don't sit back, don't be complacent, don't think it won't happen to us or in our community and our students. It can. I was at a program today that a child did drown as part of their community, a part of their school, 5 years ago. And they were talking about the impacts and them still lasting now, that the kids that were in prep at that time are finishing off in grade 6 and the impact it still has on them. So we very much understand that your curriculum's tough, it's full, it's busy, but every piece of us, swimming and water safety is so essential to keep in there and to keep persisting with and keep meeting the curriculum needs so that we can help those Victorian children get to the capability level and the benchmark that they need to by the end of grade 6. So what we're going to chat to you now is that it's been 2 years, so 2020 and 2021, a really challenging period for kids to learn to swim, whether it be through school swimming or swimming outside of schools. So we're going to give you some other alternatives. So we're really encouraging you to set up your 2022 year, so your calendar year next year. If you haven't already, start getting in that space and get the whole year organised, and start thinking how you can plan for it as well. So we're going to go through some other options beyond the voucher that Liz has just spoken about and that we spoke to in the swim school webinar on Friday. So we're going to talk about the voucher, but other systems beyond that as well that are available to you and your school. So I am going to pass over back to Caitlin to take us through the next bit.
Thank you, Liz, and thank you so much for explaining the importance of this as well. Like Liz said, we do understand that it is very busy, especially at this time following the past 18 months that schools have experienced, but this is very, very important lifelong learning that students will be developing through these programs. So let's have a look now at the 3 different options that we will be talking about today. We have heard about the voucher system that was mentioned by Liz, and we will also go through this a bit more with Jackie following my introduction. We will also look into a mega beach day that has been developed to allow for more schools to experience an open water learning experience on particular days leading into the summer period. And finally, we will talk about an incursion option for schools, which is our Meet a Lifeguard program. So we're going to start now with Jackie, who is going to talk to us a little bit more about the voucher system for swimming lessons that is available for schools. Thank you, Jackie.
Thanks, Caitlin. So Liz has already gone through a lot of this information, and for those of you who are online from swim schools, you would have seen this on Friday, but we are going to go over it again briefly so that schools know the information that have been given to swim schools, and it's just an overview of the process that needs to happen for you to get your students into swimming lessons. As Liz mentioned, they need to be enrolled by the end of June, and they need to have undertaken their swimming lessons by the end of December. So the first thing that will need to happen is you need to liaise with your swim school. Get in touch with them as soon as you can. I know they're already getting organised for schools to get in touch, and they're looking at what they can offer swim schools. So have a chat to them. If you can use your last year's funding or your 2020 and 2021 funding to do extra swim lessons this year, you can use the funding to do that. Otherwise, you need to look at the voucher system and discuss with your swim school how they'll be rolling that out. Once you've confirmed that your students will be using the voucher for the outside of school swimming lesson program, you need to have a look at the agreement. You will have, Liz has got the link for all the documents, but the agreement is there. Have a look at the agreement and make sure that you've confirmed the details with the swim school. The agreement covers off how many lessons each child will get for the funding that you've let them know that you've got available. So, and they'll be letting you know how much per lesson it will cost. Therefore, you'll know how many lessons per funding arrangement, and the date, the completion date there, as you can see, it has been input the 31st of December. So all the students need to be finished their lessons completely by the 31st of December. So once you've decided on your, sorry, next year, Wendy, I just saw you put that in, that's for next year, so 31st of December next year. Once you've sorted out your agreement and what that looks like for your students, there's a letter for parents that needs to be completed with all the details that you've agreed on with your swim school, and then that will go out to parents. There's a top bit on the second page that needs to be returned for them to say yes, they would like their child to participate in the program. So that's top bit on the second page there, needs to be signed by the parents and returned to the school. The second half, it does have a date there that parents can then go into the swim school and enrol, so that they do the enrolment themselves. Once you've got the request forms back, the parent will keep that bottom bit, which is the actual voucher, and they will take that bit into the swim school after the date that they've been told they're available to go in to enrol. So all the details are on the first page about the program. The program has to be used by the child who it's been sent home for, so it can't be offered to a sibling or a friend next door or anyone like that. It has to be used by the child it goes home to, and it needs to be used at the swim school that the school would normally use their do their swimming program at. So once you've got all the request forms back, and the swim school should give you a date where you have to get the list to them, you need to put a list together of all the students who have sent back their request to say that they want to be part of the program. Get that list to the swim school, and the swim schools will be using that list directly to enrol students. So if a student turns up with a voucher and they're not on that list, they won't be able to enrol at that time. The swim school have to get back in touch with the school and sort out what's happened with that. But the list will be available for the people doing enrolments, and they will enrol straight from those lists. So after the date, again, that's on the letter, the parent will have the date on their voucher. After the date that's on the letter, parents can then organise their own enrolment into whatever program it is that the swim school's offering. So some of them might offer a holiday program for students with vouchers. Some might have capacity to put students straight into their normal program. Some might run an intensive program for over a weekend or a long weekend, or some might be saying students can only enrol in term 2 or term 3, which is the quieter times of the year for swim schools. So the parent needs to make sure that they're enrolling after that date. And then after the program, or after the students have finished lessons, the swim school will invoice the school just as they normally would for a school program. So if that's a monthly thing, or if you would prefer them to invoice after a student's finished or after the program's finished, talk to your swim school, but they'll be invoicing just through their normal methods. So if you want a lot of detail on there, or specific names or anything, make sure you let your swim school know. So I can see there was a question about supporting documents. There are some links to those. I think Michelle has some links as well. So for schools, you would have already received your FAQs that you might have. There's also some FAQs for parents that you can send out. Swim schools also, there's a FAQ sheet for those. The agreement, Liz has mentioned that that's already been sent out to schools, so that you should already have a copy of that. And the parent letter, I believe it's all on the education website that Liz linked in earlier, but Liz might confirm that in the chat, or may have already. Yeah, so there is a lot of resources available. For any questions that you have regarding the funding side of things and the process for that side of things, Liz White is always available and happy to help out with that. If you've got any questions about how you you're implementing this with the swim school, or your swim school's not sure about it, or you can't quite figure out how it all works, feel free to get in touch with us. Caitlin will put a contact email up with us during the presentation later on. We're more than happy to help out with any of your questions, or if your swim school's got questions, get them to get in touch with us. Happy to help out anytime. Caitlin, I'll hand back to you, and if anyone's got any questions, pop them in the chat, or we do have some opportunities for questions later. More than happy to hang around and answer any questions later on.
Excellent. Thank you so much, Jackie. That was very informative and a really easy to follow step-by-step process, which is fantastic. If you do have any questions, as Jackie said, specifically about the voucher program, we do encourage you to contact the Department of Education and Training using the contact details that Liz White popped on screen at that time. If you do require any support with implementing this voucher, so contacting swim schools, so forth, please don't hesitate to get in contact with us at LSV. We will, as Jackie said, pop our information up at the end of this presentation. So I will just take back control of this presentation. Thank you, Jackie. And what we are going to look at now is we will be joined by Mark, who is going to explain to us about the next two options for your school swimming program. So our Mega Beach Days, as well as our incursion programs or Meter Lifeguard programs. Thanks, Mark.
Thank you, Caitlin. Is that PowerPoint still up, Caitlin? It's just disappeared for me.
Yes, it's still up on my.
Still up. That's all right.
Have you got control of that now?
No, I don't. Maybe if you could click through it for me. Is that all right? Yeah, sorry, I'm not sure what's going on there. Thank you, Caitlin. Yeah, thank you. My name is Mark. I'm just going to talk to you about the second two options of our alternative program menu. So the first of these is our second option, which is the Mega Beach Day. And Caitlin, I'll just get you to go to the next slide, please. Thank you. So after schools across the state missed out on swimming and water safety programs throughout the last couple of years, we've designed a couple brand new programs specifically for schools who have missed out on these opportunities. One of these programs is our new and exciting Mega Beach Day programs. So we run open water learning experiences all throughout the warmer months of Term 4 and Term 1. And our Mega Beach Day program has been developed to make the most of our available dates over the next couple of terms in Term 4 and Term 1. And it's a good opportunity to allow schools to spend the funding that they've not been able to use. So using our experienced staff from previous summer seasons, we will be delivering these Mega Beach Day programs out of Sandridge Beach, which is just outside our headquarters in Port Melbourne. It's a 1.5 hour open water learning experience where our instructors will take your students through a number of different stations. Some of these can include completing rescues, wearing and experiencing life jackets, practicing bodyboarding and learning about other key water safety messages like safety signs, learning about RIPS, when it's safe to swim, and as well as some basic first aid through Doctors ABCD. So all of these activities link closely to the Victorian curriculum and a good way to tick that off. In these programs, we cater for all year levels with up to 200 students in each session, depending on the day. We have the ability to cater for multiple schools and different year levels all on the same day as well. For this program, we've already taken lots of bookings for Term 4, which is currently at capacity, but we do have room for 2022. We have a number of dates available, and we also have the ability to add in new dates to fit around your schedule, ones on top of what we've already got scheduled in. So for these programs, as I said before, your school funding that you haven't been able to use can be used towards this program, as well as if you haven't booked anything in for next year, you can use our funding for that as well. Thanks, Caitlin. I'll just get you to go to the next slide. So to give you a bit of an example of what our days look like, we've got our video. So our Mega Beach Day programs are designed, as I said before, to cater for a large group of students. It's a carnival type day with lots of different activities. Although we are running these programs in Term 4 and Term 1, of this and next year, these aren't the only programs that we run. So we regularly run our open water learning experiences, which are called our OWL programs, and these are run at beaches, lakes and rivers all across Victoria. We offer them as half-day or full-day programs, and we design them to help students make safer aquatic related decisions and learn how to enjoy their local waterway. These OWL programs complement skills that they might have learnt in previous swimming lessons, although they don't need to have a swimming ability to participate for them, and it lets them be confident swimmers in the open water. For these programs as well, you're able to inquire with us. I think there's a couple links in the chat, so you can inquire with us through there. And we've just got a quick video. It'll give you a bit of an idea about what happens on our days. Awesome. I hope that gave you a bit of a taste about what goes on during our programs. We've just started those up within this week, so it's been really good to have our programs back up and running. The third option that I'm here to talk to you about is our Meet a Lifeguard program. So as opposed to our excursion, which is our mega beach days, this is an incursion. During these incursions, and it's called the Meet a Lifeguard program, students get the opportunity to meet with one of our LSV lifeguards, either in person or online. Our lifeguards deliver some of the most important water safety messages to ensure that our students have the knowledge to stay safe this summer, the knowledge to make those important and safe decisions. And they'll also focus on bodies of water that the students are likely to swim in. So we really cater it to the location that the school's in. We'll be talking about where they go for their favourite holiday spots or where they go on the weekend to swim with their family. The Meet a Lifeguard is a 45-minute interactive session. They learn about similar activities to our Mega Beach Day program, including learning about water safety signage, learning how to spot rips in currents, learning to spot dangers at the beach and inland waterways, as well as what a lifeguard does, why they're there to help you and why you might need one. To complement this, we also have a suite of online resources that are completely free for all schools to use, and that can be used to accompany the students' learning journey before and after the Meet a Lifeguard programs. We have been running Meet a Lifeguard programs online, and we've got a couple of pictures on the next slide, but we've been running these programs online throughout 2021 while schools have been shut. So there you can see a couple of examples of us tuning in. In these programs, we cater our sessions to all different age levels. We've done childcares all the way up to secondary schools, but these Meet a Lifeguards are focused at our primary schools, and we're able to deliver these, as I said, either online or in person. We're super excited to be able to go back into doing our incursions in schools, and we've started those up again. As I said, we've started those up this week. In terms of booking, Term 4 is booked out at this stage. However, we have plenty of spots available in 2022 for these excursions, and I think Michelle will pop another link in the chat for you to find out how to book those. Thanks, Caitlin. That's me done.
Fantastic. Thank you so much, Mark, for explaining the extra two alternative options that we have available, both our Mega Beach Days and our Meet a Lifeguard incursion program. Both fantastic programs and really valuable lessons are taught in those for the students, and both very interactive as well. Now, as Mark mentioned, we do have available some complementary resources that can support your students in understanding the key messages that are taught in these programs. All these free resources are available on our toolkit, and Michelle will pop a link to that toolkit when she gets a chance to. I know she's popping in lots of links at the moment, but that toolkit is full of lesson plans, activity sheets, activity booklets for all year levels and all different schools as well. And there's always more things popping up on there. One of them is actually our Swim City e-learning module, which is coming very soon. It will be available from the 22nd of November, so only a couple of weeks away. And this brand new module is almost like a bit of a gamification experience for students. Students can explore multiple different waterways at home, at the aquatic centre, at the lake, at the river, at a bay beach and at a surf beach to learn all about key water safety messages and ultimately learn how to keep themselves and others safe in and around water. So a very exciting activity that's coming along there, an online experience. Now, if this will be available on our toolkit as well, we will be popping a link in the chat that directs you straight to the webpage where this e-learning module will be located. At the moment, it does have just a little bit of information there, but that is exactly where you will need to go on the 22nd of November when this module is launched. So keep an eye on that webpage and keep an eye out for all of our communication emails as well for more information as we get closer to that date. Now we will move straight into a second lot of Q&A. I can see a couple of questions popping up into the chat as we go. So I will just scroll straight up to a couple that have been answered a little bit, but I think it's worthwhile mentioning them on this platform. Liz, yes, I think you...
Yeah, if I could just jump in, we're just getting a couple of questions on offline for Liz White. Liz White, can you just clarify the voucher program and using unexpended funds for Mega Beach Days? So kind of the either kind of thing.
Yeah, thanks, Liz. I answered that in the chat, but the unexpended funds can be used for swimming and water safety programs and any design that the school has for their students. So if there's unexpended funds, they can be used on the voucher program or the Mega Beach Day or any type of incursion that LSV is providing. So that's totally acceptable use of the swimming in schools funding.
Great, thanks, Liz. We were just getting a couple of additional questions after your response. So I think that clarity shows that you don't have to, not everyone's going to utilise vouchers. Vouchers might not suit your school in your scenario, but the unexpended funds could be used for Mega Beach Day or an incursion.
That's right. And Wendy's just asked if it can be used for transport. So transport to a Mega Beach Day using the Swimming in Schools funding is totally appropriate, Wendy, yes.
Thank you, Liz. Now, another question that we did have pop up from Song. If the vouchers need to be used before the 30th of June 2022, how would students graduating in 2021 work, especially when their lessons are happening from January to June in 2022? I think this was mentioned a little bit, but I might get you just to give us a bit more information about that one, please, Liz.
Yeah, no problem. I did actually answer Song's question in the chat, but Song, for Year 6 students or students that are leaving primary school next year, so for current primary school students, if they're not going to be in the same primary school next year, the school will need to send out information to families this year prior to them leaving the primary school and provide them with a voucher so that they can use that at any time in 2022. Families do need to book before the end of June in 2022, but they can access the lessons up until the end of December 2022. So they have the whole year.
Thank you, Liz. And Liz Tadoni, you have your hand up. Would you like to ask a question or make a comment?
No, I'll just make a comment back to Son that Son was one of our candidates in the earlier access and inclusion swim teacher course that we did for special schools. So Son, we're loving your engagement. Thank you very much. But if we don't clarify everything on here, then feel free to once again reach out to us or also for Liz White as well. So thanks, Son, you're all over it.
Excellent, absolutely. And I think while we do have this platform on, I think I'll just scroll through to any other questions. I might get Michelle, who has been jumping into the chat all through our webinar. If there are any questions, Michelle, that stood out to you that we could discuss a bit further.
I wouldn't mind answering Son's other question on the chat, Caitlin. So Son's asked if schools checking with swim providers, is there a limit of how many swim schools we can endorse? Swim schools may be limited to the access classes for learners of special needs. So Song, in all of the information that you'll read on the voucher program, we have encouraged schools to stay with the swim school that they usually use for their annual swimming and water safety programs. And the reason we've done this is to limit the administrative burden on the schools and the swim school. There's already an arrangement there. There's already relationships there. It should be fairly straightforward. If the swim school that you usually use doesn't have the capacity for what you want, you're more than welcome to go to another swim school. It's what works best for the school and the students.
Thank you for explaining that, Liz. That's fantastic. Okay, absolutely. Please do keep popping your questions into the chat. I'm sure there are many, many more. And as we go through, some may spring to mind. So we will be wrapping this presentation up at 4:45. However, we do only have a couple of slides left. So if you would like to hang about after the next few slides to ask a few more questions, we will all be on the webinar to answer any of those until 4:45. Now, as you can see on screen now, we do have a survey that we are requesting you to complete. It is a very quick 2-minute survey, and what it does, it allows us to understand your needs in terms of professional development based on swimming and water safety, and how we can take our professional development workshops and webinars further in future to make sure that we address the topics that you would like to hear about. So if you could please, I'm sure everybody knows how to use a QR code now, so just snap that QR code that is on screen. If you aren't able to access the QR code, Michelle has popped in a link in the chat, or you can type into your web browser www.slido.com and use the code #LSVPD2021 to access the survey as well. So that's your other option there. And as we go through, I can see lots of things being popped into the chat. Lots of people asking for more information about the different options, which is really fantastic to see. And last of all, we will pop up our contact details. So this comes straight to our education email, so schoolswimming@lsv.com.au. If you have any questions about any of the programs that we have shared today, or how to, as I said earlier, how to implement the voucher program, so how to contact swim schools, how to do all sorts of things in that sense, you can contact us at LSV using the email address on screen or the number on screen as well. We do also have another email address that also, I guess, works with the programs that we have on offer. So Mark will be on top of those emails, and I might get Michelle to pop that email address in as well. It is education@lsv.com.au. Very straightforward and easy to remember. So another great option to email about the program. So specifically the open water learning experience, or the Mega Beach Day, or the incursion program, the Meter Lifeguard program that Mark spoke about as well. So what I'm going to do is I will pop that Slido survey link back on screen. If we do ask that you please do take a little bit of time, as I said, it only takes a couple of minutes to do so, to please complete that survey for us so we can continue providing the best webinars and professional development that we can for you. And if there are any more questions, please do pop them in the chat. As I said, we will hang around for about 5 to 10 minutes, depending on how the chat is going. We would like to say, or I would like to say on behalf of everybody here today, thank you very much to all our presenters. A very big thank you to Liz White, who has joined us this afternoon and also joined us on Friday morning for another webinar for swim schools. We always appreciate you joining us for those and providing your expertise and all the information regarding the funding and everything Department of Education and Training. Thank you again to everyone, all of our education team at LSD for jumping in that chat and presenting today as well. Big thank you to Jackie, Mark and Liz, and of course Michelle for jumping in the chat and popping all those links in as we go through. And of course, thank you all to you for joining us today. Always appreciate your dedication to swimming and water safety education. It is making a huge difference to the lives of our Victorian children. So keep promoting your swimming lessons, keep pushing to get them forward, and make sure your students are getting the valuable swimming and water safety education that they need, especially leading into this busy summer period. Again, thank you very much for joining us today. We hope you have a wonderful afternoon. Please feel free to stick about if you have any questions. Otherwise, have a lovely afternoon. Get in contact with us when you need to, and we will see you next time.